and it is being recorded. It's just not on your website. Happy Thursday. It's Scott Hathcock. You're watching Makers and Shakers. Again, it's our happiest hour. And I'm sitting here with the Steve Reese, CIO of Phoenix Suns. Such a pleasure to see you, my friend. How are you doing?
Well, doing fantastic, Scott. Thanks for having me on today.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate so much that you're doing right now. In fact, you are playing your hand in a lot of different fields, I would say, based on that speech. So I want to start off. I need to start off by asking you a couple of quick questions that I have right after watching your keynote there. And that is, your childhood story is awful, to say the least. But you've come out of that. And you've come out of that with such positivity, such grace, such humor that I know you for, and a wonderful energy. What would you say to kids today that are in a similar situation? I mean, I know you gave some great advice as far as drink the water, eat the pancakes, and experience those gratitudes. But is there anything particular you would share with kids who are in that type of home life and just need something to keep going?
Yeah, great question. I just know that when my brothers and I would all get together, the thing that really struck all of us is that what we were seeing unfold in our house, we just didn't want to continue. And at some point in time, things would get ironed out. But honestly, it was pretty hopeless in a lot of ways. So there was a lot of just reinforcement with my brothers and I just to say, we've got to hold each other to a higher standard, and we've got to make the difference. The thing that was a challenge was that we just didn't have a lot of people in our lives who could help model the type of behavior to help us to know how do we work our way out of that.
Right.
And I think many of us have found different ways to do that. For me, it was the gratefulness piece. Honestly, I just got tired of being angry and upset and fearful and all these things. And by accident, I just stumbled onto the fact that being grateful was my way of just being able to put one foot in front of the other and just continue walking. So, and unfortunately, when you really, I worked with the Domestic Violence Center in San Diego, and when you have kids in these situations, they're all left to try to figure it out on their own as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that when it comes to people dealing with those situations, I think, naturally you need to extract the adult in the situation who is being abused or the abuser. But I think there needs to be a real strong amount of attention to kids to work with them, to give them the tools to figure out how do I either get through this or not become that type of abuser when I become an adult.
Yeah.
And we just felt like we had no choice.
Right. Well, I have to say your brother had wisdom beyond his years, obviously. And like you said, at that time, there were not a lot of role models or a lot of places to go, I'm sure. And so the fact that he could put it in such simple terms as well, and relatable terms, and that he had the know-how and thought to take you to IHOP. And have, and what a memory. I mean, that's such an anchor in your mind, a turning point, I would assume.
It struck me as such, drinking the water as the speech was running. I looked at Joanne and I just said, I can remember that like it was yesterday. I still remember walking on the street. I walked down Greenfield Road toward Northland Mall, and we went to IHOP, and I still remember walking in that place and thinking, this is so unusual.
Yeah.
This is just weird. And, things like that just left a real impression on me. And as I became an adult and I could process these things and begin to kind of put perspective to it, it had a lot of wisdom to it.
Yeah.
And it was a thing where I think all of us can take advantage of this. But, once again, we stumbled on these things, and all Jim knew was that, man, I've got to do something good to kind of offset what occurred. But I think in each one of our lives today, whether we become disappointed because the traffic light didn't go our way or we get hit by somebody, whatever the case may be, these lessons still hold true today, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you diving in a little bit more on that. It's just one of the things that touched me, and I had to ask you that question. So let me ask you a couple of, here's some questions coming to us live. You can reach us at info@moonshotaz.com. Email us anytime you watch these videos. and we will make sure that Steve gets these questions and we get an answer back out to you. But for right now, I've got the Moonshot staff online. They're forwarding me these questions in my text. So here's one for you. So which came first, your passion for sports, analytics, or technology?
Sports by far. I had been playing sports, organized sports, since I was in kindergarten. For as long as I can remember, it was a little tot putting the helmet and the shoulder pads on. Actually, my dad brought up a story the other day, and that was when my older brothers were playing, he actually, because I was so upset that I wanted to play, and they were the big boys, and I was 4 or 5 at the time, he actually had a shirt that he put number 1/2 on there, and so I would go out for helping to, flip the coin at the beginning of the game. So I remember that. The passion of the sports happened at a very early age, but I will say it was just a shock to me that when the Houston Oilers opportunity came by, that nobody at that point were working on analytics. Nobody was working as far as in the sports field and the technology. And to be able to do that, I had a few friends look at me thinking, well, that's kind of a weird job. We'll see how long that lasts. Now look at the industry and see what it's turned into. So I was so fortunate to be in on an industry from the ground up so early on in my career. Wow, that was
And you said, was it you were the 6th one in the country or the 7th? You made a comment in your
It was actually the sixth in the world.
Wow,
So at that point, we have scoured the world trying to figure out who else is in analytics, and there's an organization I'm a part of called SEAT, and it's basically a sports technology consortium. And by even talking to my counterparts overseas, from all I can determine, I was the 6th, and there's only me and one other person from that original 6 that are still working in sports. The one is a guy with the Baltimore Ravens, a guy named Bill Jankowski, and myself. Mm-hmm. So we're the old timers of everybody right now.
Is he still in it as well?
He's still in it as well. Yep,
nice,
sure is.
Nice. And were you an Oilers fan before you got the job?
Say that again?
Were you an Oilers fan before you got the job?
Yeah, I was, growing up in Detroit, I was really a Detroit Lions fan. I hate to admit this. But, hey, when you work for a team, that's your loyalty. I don't care what.
Yes.
And I remember my kids when we were living in Katy, Texas, and all their friends were Dallas Cowboy fans, but I had the rule of thumb, if your friends come over, no Dallas Cowboy stuff makes it in our house. So I'd come home from work, and I would see socks and shoes and shirts laying all over the lawn from the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
And but when you put your sweat and blood into it, and you're working to strive for victory, and you see just the work that goes into it from everybody, you become proud of not only being associated with the brand, but you become really proud of the people who work with you, that you battle day to day with to try to push the team over the top. And so that's where you really develop a real loyalty for that brand. So today, it's the Phoenix Suns, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a wonderful brand. We're turning the corner. We're doing great. And all of us just sit there and battle day to day to make it happen.
Well, you're going to make this next caller upset, this next email, because the question, ironically, was Tennessee Titans, Houston Astros, San Diego Padres, Phoenix Suns. Can you say on air who was your favorite? So we already know the answer to that question.
Well, let me rephrase that question.
Okay,
I understand what they're saying, but as anybody good in the media knows, you really sometimes don't answer the question. So let me answer it a little differently. Every team that I've worked with in every sport has brought something different, right? Football, to me, brought the love of football and I coached football for 12, 13 years. When I retire, I'll go back into coaching football. Football is the love of my life. But when you work in technology, the stadiums are massive, and to get anything done takes a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And basketball, they give you such creative license to do what you're going to do, and the stadiums are smaller, the arenas are smaller, so your ability to activate technology is much more effective. Baseball is kind of that in-between, and so my wife is probably a baseball fan more than anything. So when I worked in baseball, I learned a lot about baseball that I absolutely didn't know. So, if somebody asked me what was my favorite sport to work in, I would say, honestly, that each have their own area. It's like sitting down for a plate of food, and you've got the steak, and you've got the rice and everything else. I mean, each one of the courses in your meal have a different place in your life, and I think in professional sports, each one of those have meant different things to me in different ways.
Well, you handle that very well for your media training. No, that's awesome. That was funny that question came up.
It's a good one.
You know, there is a lot of technology wizardry right now that's happening in the arena. So let's talk about that for a second, because I don't think I realized that as a fan, as someone who enters into any stadium or baseball field. Or
Right.
so, I guess this question for this person is: care to share some of the coolest things that are being done currently that maybe us, fans don't know about, or even some things that you see that are coming out that you're excited about across the country. Maybe not that the Phoenix Suns are doing right now, but so first tell us about some cool things and the utilization of technology in the arenas that you work in, and then maybe predict some things coming out for us in the near future.
Right. Yeah, great question. Great question. Let me try to pick my battles here because there's a lot of different paths I could go down the road on this one.
Okay.
We're doing currently a lot of work with Verizon Wireless, believe it or not, on the basketball analytics side. And what we're doing is we're in the process of meshing together about 4 different pieces of technology that help us to analyze everything from a player's decision making on shooting shots to spacing, apart, ball movement, and all these things. And so right now, with what we're putting in place, we're collecting about what I would call 120 observations per second, or 120 pieces of data per second on what goes on in our practice facility. There's a small bit of that goes on in the arena during the game that all the teams have access to. And so one of the things that I found so amazing is, for instance, let's just take when you're taking a shot. We have different technologies that measure the release of the ball from the hand, the trajectory of the ball, what the force of it is, what the backspin is as it's going in. There is every aspect of the game that is being incredibly measured every second. Mm-hmm. The challenge is you don't want to get to paralysis by analysis by having too much data. So it's a matter of really working hard during the week to assimilate that knowledge, to assimilate our own tendencies to do the same thing. Do we always turn to the right? Do we turn to the left? So right now, those are some of the things we're doing as far as just observing ourselves. Okay. And whenever, let's just take football as a good example. When I look at an opponent, we have an opponent scout, but we also have a self scout. How do we break our own habits? When it comes to what I see coming down in the future, and I think COVID may have brought this out a little bit, I think we begin to push the experience in the arena out to the home a little bit more.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. I know during this period we're going to be working on what they call a second screen experience. While the game is on television, we also have another screen going on where we bring guests in and various people. We have higher end analytics that people can look at and that sort of thing. So I think that the thing right now is going to be is when you fill your arena up, how do you continue to push that experience outside of that? The NBA had a wonderful thing they did a while back with, by using Oculus and having that virtual reality while you sat in the stands. They've kind of backed off of that. I thought it was tremendous. I had a wonderful experience as I mixed it up with other fans who were there.
Sure.
But I think that the challenge is really going to be going forward. How do we, once we have filled our arena, how do we continue to push that experience of fans to allow them just to really feel as if they're a part of that game? And that second screen experience does a lot in bringing in a lot of former players. I know we had Sean Marion as part of our second screen experience, during our season in the bubble.
Okay. And
just for people to interact with Sean Marion was just tremendous. We've had that over and over. So I think it's just bringing that game down to a personal, kind of making it more personal for each of the fans, where they feel like they can touch and talk and understand and know the players.
So would you say, because this was a question that we were asked as well, would you say that those are some positive things that have come from this pivot that we've all had to make, particularly in your industry, that in some ways it's becoming more personal to the in-home viewer than perhaps it was before? Or how would you shape that, I guess, in a positive way?
I would agree. I mean, I think that what happens is you head down a technological road. There are certain things that prevent you from pushing the limits, and sometimes what's going on works pretty good, but you have ideas that sit out there. And I think COVID pushed many of these ideas, I know it pushed the second screen experience a lot faster than what it normally would have. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I think if there's any positive that comes out of such a difficult situation, it's that it's caused us to really be creative and try to push these technologies a little bit sooner than what they would have. And maybe this is like the proverbial me searching the car for literature on everybody. You know, you get desperate, and so I'm searching on the seats and I'm trying to look for stuff. And I think this is the same sort of thing that it causes us just to do things we normally wouldn't have.
Yeah, well, and this is the entrepreneur journey, right? And that is, there's a problem, and let me solve it. And so, you know, the normal way we interacted with professional sports, live sports, arena sports, has changed. So how do we bring something new and make that connection in maybe a different way through technology or, you know, what have you? But that's the entrepreneur journey, right? That's basically the simplicity of it.
It is, and the NBA is allowing us to really look at a lot of options that we could not have looked at before, as far as what we do with our mobile app and how we interact with our fans at home. And I think that COVID's allowed them to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and rethink, what do we do? How do we, you know, push this experience out to the fans a little more? I don't think it would have happened as fast, at least I don't think so, had it not been for, you know, the current pandemic.
Yeah. So here's a question from an entrepreneur. They want to break into the professional sports industry with a new product. They're not being very specific, obviously, but they said, you know, what's the best way to break into the industry with a product or service? And then how important are endorsements? So, you know, you see a lot of athletic gear, athletic platforms, sporting things geared toward individuals, and oftentimes you will see a famous football player, golfer, whatever, sign on to a particular item. How important is that from your aspect of breaking in?
You know, honestly, I just don't know. I can't really answer that question, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm just a geek who sits at my keyboard. That may be a really good question for somebody on our marketing side. It's tough to know. As far as the best way to break in, you know, honestly, a lot of it is just going to be persistence. I know, like on our website, we have a portal where folks that are introducing new products or things that can move the needle have the ability to register and say, hey, I'd like to sit and talk with somebody.
All right.
And so that's the one way that we help to assimilate a lot of those type things. Part of it is just, you know, also cold calling and sending emails and, hey, can you take a look at this? So on and so forth. So there have been a few of the things that we've done have come through that way. I can't say there's really a magic set way that does that, but I know that at least from a vetting standpoint, we've done it both through our, you know, vetting through our website, and then, you know, I'll receive emails from people that have different, you know, things to pitch, and depending on how, you know, how much it makes sense when I read through it, but I'm not sure what you do as far as your pitch, but I know in watching Shark Tank, a lot of times they say that the more complicated the pitch goes, the longer it goes, the more it goes downhill.
Yeah.
And I know for me that if I receive a paragraph or two and I'm talking a short thing that just says, hey, here's the value prop, it just catches my attention. If I receive a big, long dissertation, it honestly is difficult for me to hang with that before I move on to something else.
Gotcha. So let's talk about your second favorite passionate thing right now. I believe, I could be wrong, but it's sleep.
Sleep, yes.
Correct? I mean, you've become a huge advocate of sleep and utilizing the latest in sleep technology to help.
Yeah.
How did you, you know, you talked about a little bit with your life balance in your keynote, but how did you get to that place?
Yeah, at the time that our head athletic trainer had come to me asking how do we fix sleep, how do we fix fat, I was honestly wrestling with both of those. And so as Aaron and I got talking about it, I was headed up to the Consumer Electronics Show that year. So he said, hey, get your ear to the ground and try to find out what products are out there and what do we do. And so with that, you know, I'd had to make me the promise that if we're finding things for players, I think we also need to look at a front office that if we, you know, mirror society, and we probably really mirror society, 50% of our front office is going to end up being sleep deprived. And so whatever we did for one, let's please help do that for both. And he said, that's the deal. Aaron at the time was sleeping about 4 hours a night. I was sleeping about 5 hours a night, give or take. And so with that, I knew that, my dog in the fight was the fact that I wanted to really solve my problem. I didn't particularly like the person who I was at times. And naturally, when you're underslept, your brain is overactive, and you're just not the kind of nice, kind person you should be. So between weight loss and not really liking the person I was, and Aaron bringing it up, it really presented a wonderful opportunity. The more I worked on it personally, I then presented at a sports technology conference, this group called SEAT, and I presented up there, and I had so many people that had reached out to me, and still do to this day. I mean, I had somebody reach out to me who was with the Boston Red Sox. He's now with NASCAR, and it was the thing that prompted him to get a sleep apnea test, and so he's sleeping better. And so at that point, I realized, holy crap, man, this is really an issue for a lot of people, not just me. Through the course of getting more sleep, and it took me a good 6 to 9 months to learn to sleep and do different techniques after I'd ruled out having sleep apnea. I lost close to 30 pounds and about 5% body fat. And at that point, when I would go to this conference, people were just like, what in the heck happened to you?
Yeah.
And so at that point, I thought, okay, we need to really push this out. We had a voluntary small program for 2 years with employees who would just volunteer for it, and we'd get together and we'd cover the tools that we used and different options. And so that's how it started. But, it's hard. It's so funny because these days we look for low-hanging fruit in a lot of different ways. That is it. There are few of them that's out there. Sleep is the low-hanging fruit. You want to change your performance and your attitude, then that was the way to do it. And I just became a huge believer in it. Slept 7 hours and 43 minutes last night. And so it was just, I track it every night. My ring tracks it. I've actually got a computer in my ring.
Oh, cool.
So.
And then can you share any details about even your the team's journey through this process as well? I think you and I talked before, and we talked about the fact that these players are coming off these games, right? And sometimes the game is ending at 12:30 at night, and you've got this adrenaline rush, and they're not falling asleep for another 4 to 5 hours, and then they're expected to show up the next day for some new drills and practices. And can you talk about that just a little bit, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So the challenges are that it's pretty well documented that if you have a team that is on the road and they're traveling and they're on the weight stand, that they're really at a disadvantage just because of the lack of sleep. And where it comes down to is that for every time zone you travel, it takes your body a day to adjust.
Okay.
So if we're going from East Coast to West Coast, it's going to take those folks that are traveling, it's going to take their body 4 days to adjust or 3 days to adjust. And that's a real disadvantage depending on which way you're going. If you're going from west to east, it's going to be more of a disadvantage because you're going to be up late at night, and then when you're trying to wake up, your body is saying I should be sleeping, and that type of thing. So a lot of it, and the other thing too is that you'll have players or staff or whoever who after a game and you're on the East Coast, just to try to relax, maybe gaming and whatnot, and so that blue light will actually then go ahead and affect your production of melatonin. So with all that being said, what we had to do is to really look at let's take people in our media staff as a good example. And so what we did with one gal who was part of the study is that she started wearing blue light filtering glasses after the game. And it was a matter of if she's looking at her iPhone, looking at her iPad, that she'd have the blue light filtering glasses to try not to inhibit that flow of melatonin. We had people wearing night blinders. I put them on every night. I put right on my eyes when I go to sleep to block out any ambient light that's out there. We do simple things like just nasal inserts so people can breathe better. So a lot of it, unless you have sleep apnea, that's a showstopper. But a lot of it is just trying to prepare yourself a couple days in advance, which could even be if you're on the West Coast and you know you're going to go on an East Coast travel, to try to adjust your sleep schedule a little bit about a week prior. So when you get there, even if you save yourself a day, you can do that. But when you're looking at the fact that if somebody is sleep deprived, getting less than 6 hours of sleep, and they're losing 30% time to exhaustion, that's significant in an NBA game. I mean, that's the difference between being full bore great through the fourth quarter or being gassed by the fourth quarter.
Yeah. And the other reason I want to talk about this is because as a founder, or as we work with founders and startups, I'm assuming these folks don't have the best, sleeping habits. And I think we should be better at educating folks in general. I mean, this is not just about founders, but you're talking about a high stress kind of moment where the all your staff is riding on your shoulders for this idea that you've brought to life, and you've sold them on your concept. Maybe they're not getting paid what they should get paid. There's a lot of stress, I'm sure, that faces and takes away from their sleep. So I want to help. I think that's a key thing, and I think the best way to help is just to keep educating these folks like you are.
Yeah, if there's a couple of things that I would recommend. One is there's a book by a guy named Matthew Walker called Why We Sleep, and I think it's sitting back here somewhere, right there. I've been through that book a number of times, and it just provides, first, a lot of scientific data on what the hazards are of not sleeping. But, honestly, when you approach people and say, well, if you don't sleep, you're going to be 70% more prone to get cancer. Well, when I'm 25 years old or 35 years old or 40, that doesn't seem to resonate. But what you begin to see is, like, also on the performance side, that as you do sleep better, you're more creative, your energy level's better, you're nicer, and especially for me, like I was in the automotive repair business, I had to be, truly nice. I'm in retail. I'm breaking bad news to people all the time. Your transmission's gone. Oh, you may need a set of brakes, $350. You have people that don't have it. So that to me became the incentive, is just my ability to just have a higher level of performance. And so I would really start with the book, Why We Sleep.
Okay.
There's another local group here that I've done a lot of work with called Resonea. Resonea, based out of Scottsdale, has an app called Drowsel, and that was one of the apps that we ended up using to help our people through that education process. And then there's another really good tool called NuCalm, Nucalm, that I used that was fantastic for those days when I wake up at 3 in the morning, and then I do what they call a NuCalm session. You can look it up on the website, and that helped to recalibrate me and bring me back. But as an entrepreneur, I can really, really relate to that, because when I had the automotive business, when I was going down the tubes, I was literally sleeping about 1 hour a night. I just was wired. I totally get it. Oh my God! So when I hear about that for people,
Yeah. So let's go back to the COVID thing that you just mentioned again. How are you you used to do a lot of shows, right, where you looked at new technologies. How are you doing your job today in this new environment? How have you adjusted personally?
Yeah. A lot of it is structured by, we have a separate group within our organization that is really dealing with a lot of the protocols for how should we work. A lot of it's led by Jason Riley, our CEO, and our HR department. And so what we've done is, just from a company standpoint, we are still on a every other day in the office type schedule. We want everybody to be in the office about 2 days 1 week, 3 days the next. We are, like everybody else, we are masked up. We are washing our hands. If you feel the slightest bit of sickness, don't come to work. You get a pass, just work from home. As far as the MBA is concerned, they have a very strict set of protocols for how you behave at the training facility. 2 people on my staff are approved to be in there. I'm not.
Gotcha.
2 people are approved. They have to be COVID tested 2 to 3 times a week. So it's a challenge, but I think, what I've come back to is that when you see a number of people that have been displaced, in like the hospitality industry, honestly, I think we are just grateful that we have a job, that we can go to something every day and keep going forward. So I don't know if we look at it necessarily as a burden. You've got to do what you've got to do to get through to the next day and provide service.
A lot of Zoom.
a lot of Zoom, a lot of Teams. I mean, how many different platforms? Blue Jeans,
Yeah.
Teams, Cisco, WebEx. I mean, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of that, and it's taken a lot of effort. And you add on top of that, we've got an arena renovation going on.
Oh, gotcha. I forgot about
Built
that.
a brand new practice facility. Maybe for at least our technology group, it's been a godsend because we've kept very, very busy, way busy, during a time when a lot of my counterparts are sitting at home and they're twiddling their thumbs and they're wondering when's the next shoe going to drop. We don't have time to think about that.
Right.
So.
All right. So I know I've taken a lot of time of yours tonight, and I apologize, but again, I am grateful for you and how you have shared your personal story. So I want to ask you this one last question. I've been talking every night. I ask this question: if you weren't doing this job today, this industry today, what would Steve be doing? What would you choose to do?
I'll tell you two things that I would be doing, and I have no shadow of a doubt. First would be I'd be coaching high school football. My oldest son right now is a defensive coordinator at a school outside of Nashville called Stewart's Creek. I think that the day I retire, I probably go work for him. I'll be the ball boy. I'll carry the water. I'll do whatever they want me to do. If it were in industry itself, and let's just pretend that they kicked me out of coaching. And, I tell you what, coaching was one of those things to where I felt like when I did it, I just felt like God's eyes were down on me all the time. I just felt like it was just such a wonderful, wonderful job. If I weren't doing that, I would probably be doing something like, maybe work in law enforcement, the FBI, somewhere along there, because I view that sometimes can be a competitive sport as well, depending on this cat and mouse. And I'd love to be maybe involved in cyber crimes or something along those lines.
Wow. I thought you were going to say a professional speaker.
Hey, I would love to do that too. I will tell you, I would love to do that too. I think what's interesting. Everybody has their own unique story.
Yes.
And I feel like when I remember my brothers and I talking, and we felt like, as far as our upbringing, we didn't want to let that go to waste. We feel like there's a lot of people who are in that situation. And thankfully, there's been wonderful reconciliation with the parents and everybody else. And it's a real story of victory. But I believe that there's a lot of people that are in the midst of that struggle. And so in many respects, I would love, maybe that's number 3 then, I would love to go on the road and just talk about these were the struggles and these were the things I learned, and some of them, by God, were by accident. They end up, now we look back and they're rooted in scientific fact. But, there's just a lot of identification where I've had people in my life through the way where I'm like, no kidding. And, that would be another wonderful thing.
Yeah, well, I could see that very clearly happening in your future, regardless of what happens. Both of those things, actually, and I think you would be awesome at them. So, Steve, I want to thank you again for joining us tonight, and really loved your keynote, and I encourage more folks to learn more about Steve Reese. I also encourage more folks to pay attention to the Phoenix Suns and the great use of technology.
It may be happening this year. I'm just saying, there's a lot of payback that's due. So.
Exactly. Hey, we've had another fantastic evening this evening, and again, I want to thank you all for joining us. Again, later on, if you have questions for Steve, just email us at info@moonshotaz.com. and we will forward your questions to Steve and get back those answers to you. So we've got another big day tomorrow, same time, 8:30 in the morning. You can watch us at moonshotaz.com. We'll have 2 more workshops in the morning, 2 powerful workshops in the morning, and then later on around 5 o'clock, we're going to see the actual pitch clips from 2 of our innovators here in Flagstaff that registered and applied for the Innovate Waste and PPE Responder Challenge that the City of Flagstaff puts on. So you'll see their 2 entry videos, and that'll be followed by an interview with myself and Charlie Horn, another great entrepreneur-minded thought leader. So you're not going to want to miss that. Following that interview, we're going to announce the winner and present some money for the Innovate Waste and PPE Challenge. So another big day. Thank you, Steve, so much. Thank you guys for watching tonight, and we'll see you in the morning. Good night.
Video production services for makers and shakers provided by Moonshot Studios, powered by PDR Digital Media.
Whoa, whoa, good goddang. This old stagecoach is letting me down. Sure breaks down a lot too. Darn uncomfortable. Why would I use this when you can use this? If you're tired of your broken down, slow moving big bank, then give us a call at SunWest, a responsive entrepreneurial business bank that puts you first.
Happy Thursday night, happy hour. It's Scott Hathcock with Moonshot at Nascent. So good to see you guys. I'm so glad you joined us again. You won't believe tonight's guest speaker. He was incredible, right? I thought so, and he's here with me live right now. Mr. Steve Reese, the CIO of the Phoenix Suns. How are you doing tonight, Steve?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm running out of the ballpark perfect. All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.